That land, guys. Let's get into it here, shall we? And we're going to start off with this. I don't know if you've heard, but Jonathan Majors got himself into a little bit of trouble a little while ago. Got arrested, got convicted, got booted out of the MCU. Although they probably would have removed him from the MCU anyway because Kang was going nowhere. But Jonathan Majors, after his conviction, a lot of things happened. But one of the notable things that happened was that he had a movie coming out that a lot of people were very excited about because it sounded great. A lot of people are saying it was the best performance of his career. It's this movie called Magazine Dreams, where he played a bodybuilder. And a lot of people said it was absolutely incredible. It was fantastic. But it was being distributed, I believe, by Searchlight. Yep. That is owned by Disney. And Disney waited until after the jury came back and found him guilty, and they decided to drop the movie. So Searchlight gave the movie back to the producers and gave them the right to shop it around. Well, I had totally forgotten about this movie, but meat's back on the menu, boys. Jonathan Majors. His movie, Magazine Dreams, is coming out in theaters. This comes from the Hollywood Reporter saying Jonathan Majors' Magazine Dreams landing theatrical release from apprentice outfit Briarcliff, I hope that's how you pronounce it, says this: Jonathan Majors' bodybuilding drama Magazine Dreams has found a path to theaters after being dropped by Searchlight in January following the star's criminal conviction. Briarcliff has picked up the project for distribution, the Hollywood Reporter has confirmed, and plans to release it in theaters in the first quarter of 2025. That means it's probably like 3 or 4 months away. The Tom Altenberg-run distributor has a history of acquiring controversial projects and will release the Donald Trump feature The Apprentice later this month after no major studio in Hollywood would touch it. All right. So Magazine Dreams is coming out into theaters. How do I feel about it? Well, I have 2 different parts of my thoughts, all right? First, let me talk about just the movie fan in me. The movie fan in me is thrilled by this news because this was a movie that a lot of us were very, very interested in when we heard it was in development. Then they were shooting it and we got, the on-set photos came out, the synopsises came out. It looked really good. And the word and the buzz behind it was that everybody was thrilled with it. Again, Jonathan Majors, who is already quickly becoming one of the best actors going today, they said this was the best performance of his career. So as a movie fan, I got to say, I'm absolutely thrilled to hear this. Okay, so that's the movie fan side of me. How do I feel about it just as a person? That this guy who is convicted in court is now going to have this movie coming out. I actually feel pretty good about it. And let me explain why I feel pretty good about it. I did an entire video. You guys will find it on my channel. It's actually on the front page of the channel. If you go down to our editorials playlist, you'll see I have it on there, just explaining the charges that were brought against Jonathan Majors and what he was actually found guilty of. But more importantly, what he was not found guilty of. Jonathan Majors faced 4 charges. He was found guilty on the 2 lesser charges. He was found not guilty on the 2 more severe charges. What is key to keep in mind here is that the charge he was found guilty of was one that the language in the law that he was charged with was that he caused an injury to somebody through reckless behavior. Now, the reason that's important is because there is another subsection to that he could have been charged under, which was intentionally injured. The jury basically said, because the 2 charges that he was acquitted of involved charge that he intended to harm somebody. He intended to hurt a person. Those he was found not guilty of. The one he was found guilty of was that he did not intend to hurt anybody, but through his reckless behavior, somebody ended up sustaining an injury. And he was found guilty of that, which he should have, because according to the law, the letter of the law, that happened. But I think it's important in law, and this is why I made that video, that we understand that there is more nuance than just somebody was found guilty of a charge versus, well, what specifically were they found guilty of? Now, Jonathan Majors, I believe in being held accountable for your actions, even if it's sometimes unintentional, sometimes reckless, whatever. I believe, because believe me, during the court cases, a lot of other creepy stuff came out. But in our country, you don't get found guilty for being creepy. At any rate, I believe even if it's just through reckless behavior and unintentional, I still believe we have to be held accountable for our actions. But I want us to take a second and think about that. Was Jonathan Majors held accountable for his actions? Remember, he was only found guilty of doing something unintentionally. As a result, Jonathan Majors was globally humiliated. I mean, globally humiliated. He lost out on, without exaggeration, tens of millions of dollars in sponsorships, movie deals, other projects he had going, all taken from him. He lost the biggest role of his life and what would have been a very lucrative future on that thing with his Kang the Conqueror role. Although I still believe Disney probably would have cut the role anyway because Kang just wasn't working. Anyway. And the court itself applied consequences that are, as we speak, in the midst of being satisfied. So while I do believe somebody needs to be held accountable for their actions, I also believe that once they are held accountable for their actions, they need to be allowed to move on. And I think for what Jonathan Majors was convicted of, which again was an unintentional injury caused due to his own reckless actions, he's been held accountable. He's paid a price higher than I will ever pay for things that I would do. Right? Like if I ran my car into somebody, I'm not going to be globally humiliated. I'm not going to be out tens of millions of dollars. I mean, my life's going to be ruined, but nonetheless. So I think somebody needs to be held accountable, but I think he was held accountable by the standard by which the law applies. And if in our society we're saying that's what we want, and he's been held accountable, he was found guilty, punishments were applied, and he's satisfying the punishments that were applied, I think the guy needs to be allowed to move on. And if this distribution company decides, hey, we want to take a risk on this and release it, God bless. I mean, just because he needs to be allowed to move on, that doesn't mean any other studio should be obligated to hire him because he's going to be a little bit of a PR nightmare, right? Like no matter how much you believe Jonathan Majors is guilty or how much you believe Jonathan Majors was innocent or whatever, we all agree that Jonathan Majors is a bit of a PR nightmare, right? That a lot of studios may not want to put their money behind. So no studio is obligated to pick up any of his movies or to hire him for anything. But if a distributor says, you know what, we think there's potential in Magazine Dreams, we think we want to release this and they're going to do it, I say good for them, and I honestly am okay about it. Now, I say that very cognizant of the fact that there are going to be other people that have different thoughts on that and different opinions, and I totally get it. I really, really do. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's video, The Perfect Jean. Okay, so I've got to tell you about The Perfect Jean. These jeans are seriously a game changer. You know that feeling you get when you find a pair of jeans that fit so well that you almost forget that you're wearing them? That's what happened when I tried these. I'm not kidding. They're as comfortable as your favorite sweatpants, and they can slide on like them too, but they still look amazing. Look, as guys, we've all suffered through stiff, uncomfortable jeans, but The Perfect Jean is all about recusing, well, your gentlemanly area. These jeans are soft, stretchy, and they fit like they were custom made just for you. Because they've got an insane range of sizes, whether you're a skinny jeans kind of guy or rocking the bigger look. And they didn't just stop with jeans, they've got the perfect tee as well, with just the right amount of stretch to hide that beer belly, but still make you look great. It's finally time to stop crushing your balls in uncomfortable jeans by going to theperfectjean.nyc. Our listeners get 15% off your first order, plus free shipping, free returns, and free exchanges when you use the code Campea15 at checkout. That's 15% off for new customers at theperfectjean.nyc with the promo code Campea15. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show by telling them that we sent you. F your khakis and get The Perfect Jean. Anyway, Chris, you know, you and I have not discussed Jonathan Majors
in
like
a long time.
In a long time
Yeah.
since we discussed it. So when we have not discussed the story in advance, Magazine Dreams is getting released. How do you feel about that?
It is a potentially great film. It made a really big splash when it first came on the,
The festival circuit?
Festival circuit. There was a bidding war for it and everything. And I'm so happy that the people involved in making this movie get to have it see the light of day. I don't know how I feel about it in general as a person. I don't. Because, you know, he did avoid jail time. He was sentenced to a 52-week in-person domestic violence counseling treatment plan, which may or may not be helpful. Who knows? I don't know what happened behind closed doors. A lot of that case was just messy back when we were reporting on this. It was very messy. It was not just the usual he said, she said. There was just so much odd video between everyone on that case that it really was hard for me to wrap my head around what the actual truth was. And clearly a jury of his peers came to their own verdict and their own belief on that, but it's still so hard to weigh in because I wasn't one of the people in that room, in that courtroom, and I'm not Grace Jabari. You know, I don't know what actually happened between the two of them. So it is kind of just a weird feeling. I will say though, that there are so many people, and I brought this up when we were first reporting on all of the trial and everything and the immediate cancelization of Jonathan Majors, that there are so many people in Hollywood who have done so many more egregious things. I'm not saying that to make this a suffering war, like Grace Jabari did not suffer anything, that Jonathan Majors did not suffer anything, but there have been people in Hollywood who have not been canceled, who have committed atrocious crimes. There have been people who have had horrific violence against women and they still make movies constantly. And so it is just one of those weird things to kind of try to wrap your head around of when is it okay to let somebody become a better version of self, when are things not forgivable. It's just such an odd thing that I can't really tell anyone how to feel about. I don't know. Yeah.
That's why for me personally, again, and I think everybody has the right to feel about this however they do. For me, my criteria for how I try to shape how I feel about it is just, look, like to your point, Kristen, you're saying like, we weren't in the courtroom, we weren't, right? Is that, okay, so that's why we have a system. There was a jury. They saw all the evidence. They heard all the arguments. They believed he was guilty of these two things, which were the much lesser crimes, but he was not guilty of the more serious things. And they applied the penalty that comes with that. And that's all I can go on. I mean,
exactly.
we can feel differently about it, but that's all I have to go on. And so if that's what the jury who heard all the evidence and saw all the stuff and heard all the stuff and were subject to the arguments by the prosecution and the defense, and that's the conclusion that informed jury came to, then that's what I'll go by. And for me, he paid the penalty and it's time to let him move on. Again, would I hire Jonathan Majors to be in a movie that I'm producing right now? I don't know. But do I have a problem with somebody else hiring him to do a movie right now? I don't have a problem with it. So I don't know. Look, there's going to be a lot of different feelings on this and all that kind of stuff. Whatever you guys think about it, jump on down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video. Make sure you like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget, we have a daily podcast called the John Campea Show podcast, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting app of choice. Go and subscribe to it today so it'll be there when you need it.